Well, I hope that woke you up. Let's dig into Excel Module 3. And I have to tell you, out of all the projects that we go through in this course, this one is the most challenging. So I hope you've started early in the week and have time to really look at this. This assignment is almost identical to what you're expected to know on the test. So really study this as well. This project is very close to the test. So we've got this department store called Manola. Maybe they sell very fancy Manola high heels. Some of you might know what those are. And we're looking at a 6-month financial projection. That means this hasn't happened yet. This isn't like a budget. This is saying, okay, for next year, based on our old sales, which obviously might not be the same, how do we expect to do in January, February, March, April, May, June? And notice it always shows today's date here. You can see when I'm recording this. And you can see we're going to find out the revenue. Revenue money means money coming into the cash register and money going out with expenses. And operating income basically means what's left. So we're also going to do an expense chart sheet with a big graph here before we're done. So what I want you to do is go get your SAM opening file, your starter file open, and let's continue. So I've opened my online book and typed in cells A1, Manola Department Stores, comma, Inc., period, for incorporated. 6-month financial projection. Don't forget your little dash between 6 and month. And I've typed in B3 for January. I am going to have a theme. So I'm going to head over to page layout, click under themes, and the one that I'm looking for is called Slice, SLICE. There we go. Now that I have my Slice theme, I want to take January and put it on an angle. And the reason I'm going to do that by clicking the Home tab is with all the text that's going to be on the screen, it would really be nice for the months to really pop, and being on an angle will do it. If I go to the Home tab in the alignment group, I can hit this down arrow by the AB with an arrow. It says orientation. I could use any of these, angle counterclockwise and so forth, but I'm going to click at the bottom, Format Cell Alignment, to show you all the things that you can do here. I'm going to pull up this little bar up to 75 degrees. And sometimes it's hard to get right on 75 degrees. So if you want to, type in 75 degrees right there. After you have the orientation slanted to almost straight up, but not all the way, I'm going to click OK. And look what it does to January. And I need to get the other 5 months in. So let me get my autofill handle that we've used every module. Pull it out until we get to June. That'll be G. And notice it continues to do the same thing. And when I type into H3 the word total, notice we'll put in total, we'll put in graph for later, and we'll go ahead and make sure that they are also format cell alignment. These are also set to 75 degrees. So now this just makes things pop out a little bit nicer here. Looks good. Next, I've laid my mouse between column A and B and stretched it out to 38.50, or you can right click on that column and go to column width and make sure it says 38.50. It probably will switch to 5.6. That's okay. So now that we have that in there, I want you to look in your book for what to type, and we'll pick up next there. I've typed everything in from figure 3-11 in the book, and now on cell A18 typed in what dash if assumptions. Now, one of the things I want to do here is notice how these particular cells are indented. We'll get that going on in a second, but before we do that, I'm going to copy cells A9 through A13 by clicking on this copy. In the Home tab, in the clipboard, click on the 2 sheets of paper called copy. Notice the little Las Vegas lighting up around those cells. And then I'm going to click A19, and now come up here and hit paste. And that pastes all those values in. Now, one of the things that I want to do here is indent some of the items inside the categories. So like part of the revenue is your cost of goods sold. So to indent in cell A5, let's click this Increase Indent button. It's under the Home tab. In the alignment, you click the arrow and it'll increase it. I'm going to do the same here from rows 9 through 13 to increase the indent one time, and then from 19 to 13. Now this section called What If Assumptions are going to be kind of like budgeting. We're going to say, for example, we're going to reserve, let's say, 10% of our funds for the site rental. It's kind of like taking all the money that comes in and categorizing it, how we're going to spend it. But I've decided I need a couple extra percentages or items that I'm going to have down here. So I want to add a row between row 19 where it says bonus and row 20 that says salary. Well, the way to do that is to click on the cell following where you want it to be or after. So I'm going to click on the number 20 over here in the rows. And now to insert a row on the Home tab, there's a group called Cells. I can hit this down arrow by Insert, and it says, hey, what do you want to do? I want to insert a sheet row. So when I click there, watch between my row 19 and 20, it moves everything down. So now I can click inside of A20 and type in revenue for bonus. Do you see how it automatically indents because we indented before? So it kind of gets that trend. I'm also going to add another item above row 19. So I'll click on 19 and once again click Insert Sheet Row. And let's type in here the word margin. Margin, another word is markup. And since this one isn't indented, I'll just make sure it is by clicking on the Increase Indent. Now, I want to type in the numbers that you're next going to see in your sheet in figure 317. The reason we're going to type in the numbers, just like these numbers that are here, is to show you that if you type in a percent, a comma, the decimal, you can type them in that way instead of going up and making them a format of a percent. So next, open up figure 3-17, get these 7 numbers typed in before we move on. Next, I went to figure 3-17 and typed in the following numbers. And I do want to show you that if I click on, let's say, B24, it's really 3.5%, but it does round up. Notice that there's something interesting about these numbers. These values have typed in the comma, the decimal, the percent sign. I did not click on this number area. So I want to show you that you can literally type in values and they can be perceived here. And then next, go to figure 318 and type in these 6 numbers from cells B4 to June. And these 6 numbers represent at all their department stores, how much money do they think is going to come in through the cash registers in January or online sales. So this is $1.47,500,000. Next, I'm going to click on cell H1 right here. I want to put in today's date, but I don't want to type it in, and here's why. I want you to imagine each day at my job, I'm going to print out another page of this spreadsheet. And I have a whole pile of pages. I want a date on them to know that this was yesterday's, there's today's, there's last week's, and I don't want to have to type the date in each time. So Microsoft has a function for today's date. Let me show you how to put it in there. It's called now. Now, while we're doing this, I also want to kind of review you what's going to be on your test in a couple weeks for Excel. So I'm going to open OneNote and type in Excel test review. And one of the first things that's going to definitely be on the test, it's worth 5 out of the 100 points, is the now function. So if you want to keep some notes somewhere as well, so you know that these items are definitely going to be on the test. So let me show you how to do this now function. So it's one of the 300 functions that are built in. Remember last week we did min for the smallest, max for the largest, and average. Well, it's also under this. It's where the f of x, or where you insert a function. And what I'm going to do right here is change it from all to date and time, just to narrow down what's here. And I want you to go down to the letter N as in now, N-O-W, select now, and it tells here it's going to return the current date and the time. Oh, I didn't want the time. Well, let me show you how we can get rid of that. Click OK twice, and it will typically show you right here. Notice how we get the date and the time. By the way, you'll see your today, whatever today's date is. This has been pre-recorded. So notice the date and the time. Well, I don't want the time. So I'm going to make sure H1 is still selected and come to the Home tab to the number group. And once again, like we've done before, I'm going to click on this number format launcher. And what I want you to select is the category called date. And the layout or type that I want is this third one. It's got the year first, the month, and then the day. So now every single day, today's date will show up. Now today is my day, but when I open this on Halloween, up will come the last day of October, October 31. If I were to open it on Christmas, I get December 25, on Valentine's, February 14th. So this will change every day I open it up. Hey, next is probably the most challenging thing we're going to learn today. In fact, since it encompasses so many formulas, it's going to count 20 points on any test, probably at least. So it's called absolute reference. So definitely make sure you wrap your arms around this. And I'm going to do it several times to make sure we get this. So let's set up absolute reference. But I'm going to do the one they have in the book a little bit later and start on an easier one first. But we're going to get the exact same content done that our book chapter has. I'm going to come down here and click on cell B10. I'm purposely going to show you an error that is common and show you how to fix it. So that way you'll understand absolute reference even better. So I want you to imagine at this company, the company made $1.47 million in the cash register. And if we come down here, right now we're in B10, that's going to be the salary. To compute the salary, let's look down here. The salary in row 22 is 25% of the money that comes into the cash register. So we're going to be paying our employees about 25% of the money that we make. So to do a formula, I am going to do 25% of B4. Now, if anytime you've said of, I think starting in about 3rd or 4th grade, of has always meant multiply. So on the test that you'll ultimately have, you're going to have a very empty spreadsheet like this one, and you're going to need to know and understand what formulas to put. It's not going to tell you. So you need to learn what kind of math, because in real life, no one's going to walk up to you and say, multiply. So let's think this through. To do a formula in B10, I'm going to put an equal sign. All formulas begin with an equal sign. I'm going to be computing 25% of this revenue. So let me click there. There we get B4. Like we said, of means to multiply. And we're going to compute 25% of this. So I'm going to click B22. So my formula is equals B4 times B22. Now, that particular cell is going to work. Let me show you. I hit enter. That looks right. About 25% of a million. 4 is 367,000. Sounds good. Now, let me purposely show you the error that's going to be computed and why. If I go to copy this formula, now let's look at the formula. It's B4 times B22. In fact, I'm going to come over here and write that down because I'm going to come over here and teach you with these numbers in a little bit. B4 times B22. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger so you won't be blind by the end of this. There we go. So now that I copy this formula over to G through February, March, April, May, and June, do you see I have a problem? It's all zeros, and people aren't going to be happy not to get a salary. So let's figure out what went wrong here so we know how to fix it. Everybody click on cell C10, and let's look at this formula. It's C4 times C22. You say, well, what's the problem in that? Let's look. Here's C4. Well, that looks good. Times C22. Let's look at C22. Everybody look at C22. There's no value there. And don't copy this over. It's just no value there. We want to multiply C4 by this fixed value called B22. So let's go back and look at that formula. So I want the B4, when it copies using relative reference, to become C4, but I don't want the, let me get that typed back in for you. So equals C4 times, I don't want C22. There is no C22. Everybody look at your spreadsheet. There's nothing there. And if you multiply by nothing, you get 0. So I want to tell it keep B22. Well, I don't want to have to type in B22 every single time because if there were thousands of formulas, then I couldn't copy. So Microsoft has made something called absolute reference. What it means is you can keep a cell inside a formula the same by putting dollar signs before the row and the column. So look what I did. By the way, these dollar signs really truly have nothing to do with money. And when I do that, this means keep them absolute or fixed. That means when I copy that formula, the B4 is going to change to C4 by relative reference, but the B22 is going to stay $B, $22, and that's going to be your fixed amount. So what we're doing right here with our little draw tool, if you would, is we're keeping this part, the B22 part, all the same. So let me show you how to go back and fix this. So we're going to double click on cell B10 to get back inside. And we need to tell the computer, hey, we need B and 22 to have dollar signs around it. So when I copy that, it will work. Now, let me show you a trick to do this. If you hold down the function key, and different computers do it differently, and so on my computer, I hold down function and F4, and let me show you what happens right here. It puts a dollar sign in front of B and a dollar sign in front of 22. What that means is to keep that part of the formula absolute or fixed. So when it's copied, it stays B22. So this portion of the formula is called absolute reference. And this part of the formula doesn't have the dollar signs. So we call that relative reference because it changes relative to where it is. Now, if you don't have the function F4 key on your keyboard, and it's possible you do not, you can just type in the $B, $22, and it does the exact same thing. Or if you forget about F4 on the test or quiz, just remember to put the $B, $22. Now that I have that in, I still have to recopy it to get rid of these zeros. So now I go to my autofill handle, drag it over to column G, And now I have the formulas that are actually working. Let's look at this one in cell C10. Notice this is 281,000. How they get that? Let me double click. The B4 in the formula changed to C4, and the $B, $22 stayed the same. And you don't want to have to type them in every cell because there may be thousands of these. So that's why absolute reference was created. Hey, let's try it again in site rental. So for our site rental, that's kind of like our rent for our beautiful Manola department store in a mall or in a strip mall or something. If we look down here, this site rental is set to 10%. And so we do the same thing that we did before. We start with an equal sign. We click on our revenue. We multiply that revenue by how much of the budget we're going to spend on site rental. That's 10%. So now I have B4 times B23. I'm going to press function F4 to put the absolute reference upon this cell. Why this cell? Because when it copies, there's no values here, 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 here. Now there are values for B4. There's C4, and there's D4, and E4, and F4, and G4. So therefore, we have the absolute reference around the fixed value. Press enter, and then get your autofill handle and drag through June. So you're seeing why this is going to count a lot in your test, because it's going to be in a lot of your formulas. Let's do it in marketing. Equal sign. We're going to click on revenue. Multiply it to find out what is the percentage of this. If we come down here, the marketing is actually B24, which is really 3.5%. It just rounds up to 4. And then we need to hit function F4 or type the $ in front of the B24 to get the absolute reference. Now we have this value. We can copy it across. You're starting to see a trend here. This is going to appear in a lot of your formulas, but don't put it in a formula that doesn't need it. We'll show you about that in a second. Miscellaneous, we're going to spend about 5% of our budget. So we're going to click an equal sign in B13, click on the revenue, put the asterisk, which is above the number 8 on the keyboard, which means multiply. And let's come down here and click on our miscellaneous. Don't forget, this can't copy over. So this value needs to have absolute reference. I can type the $B, $25, or if you have an F4 function key on your computer, it will do the same. Let's go ahead and hit enter. So now we're going to spend about $73,000 out of what comes in of 1.47 million. For miscellaneous, that's probably everything from electricity to all the other pieces, maybe to the design of our store, whatever. So we'll copy that over to G13. Now, when we come back, we're going to do B5, cost of goods sold. Next, we've clicked on B5 to do cost of goods sold, but I want you to first understand, instead of just clicking and typing, what this means. I want you to imagine you're in front of a big mall, inside the mall, and you're ready to walk into one of the big anchor stores like Belk or JCPenney or any of these big stores. When you first walk in, usually you're in the cologne or makeup area. Well, the reason for that is that's the highest margin or the highest markup. My son actually works for L'Oreal as an engineer, and he said that it only cost them $1 to make the fancy nail polish or lipstick, but then they charge $20 for it. That's called margin or markup. Mm-hmm. So this particular store marks up their goods, and that's how they make money. In fact, they mark up their goods by 81%. So that's going to be an important piece. So here's the formula. This one we wouldn't expect you to know on your own. We give you something like this. We said, let's take the revenue and multiply it. And we don't want to find the markup. We want to find out, well, what did we buy the goods for and then marked it up? Let me give you an example. You walk into Walmart, they put the highest markup in front. So all those end caps are usually marked up. But think about where they put the milk at Walmart. It's way in the back of the store. Well, that's because if the milk has the lowest markup, it was only marked up 3%. So if a milk is $3 a gallon, In other words, they only marked it up by like 9 cents. So they charged 309 for it. So a very low markup. So how much did they pay out from 1.47 million, what's found in B4 to get the markup? Well, we'd have to do 1 minus this value, 81%, to find out what did we pay for it, and then it was marked up to 1.47 million. Now, if I were to hit enter right now and just copy it across, I'm going to run into absolute reference here as well. Why? Well, for B4, there's C4 and D4 and E4 and F4, but if you look down here for B19, if I start copying over, there's no value. So I've got to make this value fixed or absolute. To do that, I now press the function F4 key, puts the dollar signs where I want them. And now when I enter, I paid, we're selling it for 1.4 million, but we only paid 275,000 for this stuff. So we mark it up a lot, and that's how stores make up pretty well. And that's why, like at American Eagle, they put the sales stuff in the back. They hope that you will buy the more marked up stuff, higher margin, as you walk by, instead of doing the real low margin stuff in the back of the store on the sales rack. Now, let's do some basic formulas now. For example, let's click on B6, and this one, if I spent 1.47 million but had to pay the people who make the stuff that we sell 275,000, what's left? So we're going to put an equal sign here. When I say what's left, I hope you're thinking subtraction, because now I click B4, put a subtraction sign, B5. And those kind of formulas we expect you to know, just basic math. Now, here's the question. Do I need absolute reference on these two cells or not? And don't think to yourself, well, maybe I should just throw it on. No. If you throw it on when you shouldn't, then it will subtract by the wrong fixed value. So let's look at B4. There's one for January, there's C4, oh, there's one for February, March, April, May. I don't need absolute reference on that B4. Let's look at B5. Well, there's one for C5 and D5 and E5. So I don't need absolute reference on that either. If I would have thrown it over, I would have then subtracted every one of these rows by 275 instead of 263 and 222 and 280. So hit enter here and then copy that cell over through June. So now you can see after we paid for the goods, this is what was left, or what we call the gross margin. This is how much we actually made off the goods after we paid for them. Now, next, we want to do the if statement.